What is it that we truly know? Only what we have experienced in our lives and what we have been told, whether through written, verbal, or visual communication. Therefore, what I'm about to say is what I know to be true. It is from my search for understanding, knowledge, and truth. It's taken from social media, mainstream outlets, and other documented material. Oh, and it is also from my own experience. There are two sides to every story, but there is only one truth. Otherwise, truth would not be truth, would it? Therefore, you may not accept, like, or believe what I'm about to say, but that is only because you have chosen to believe differently. I do, however, fully believe that if you do your own research, you will find that what I'm about to say is correct. It is right. It is truth. Now, am I the smartest person out there? Not even close. Am I the one with all the answers? No, not even close, again. Am I the most eloquent speaker and writer? No. But I hope I have improved over the years, at least. Am I one who tries to learn and understand and grow? Yes. That is why I have waited to post this message. I may not have the recall power that many do, but I can recall enough that with research I can find the right wording and the most accurate information. And I am one who does their best to do their own research, tries to educate themselves, and thinks more critically than many. Now, you may be thinking that's a diss, but is that a diss or a way to shame people or elevate myself? No, not at all. It's meant as a wake-up call for all Americans, a wake-up call for all who desire to cut the strings of the puppet master, a wake-up call for those who wish to, as the quote from The Matrix goes, you take the blue pill, the story ends, you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Now that's not me showing you, but many people will. Now, over the last decade, we've witnessed an undeniable trend in our culture and our society where political ideology has been taking the form of a type of religion for many people. Voices silenced, ideas labeled as dangerous, and questions treated not as the foundation of democracy, but as threats to it. Side note here, America is not a pure democracy. It is a republic, a constitutional republic. Now, over the last decade or so, at least, we have seen calls for censorship, often cheered on by public figures. If we remember, in 2023, Senator Chuck Schumer demanded Fox News remove Tucker Carlson, saying Carlson had perverted and slimed the truth. What did he do to warrant this? He spoke of and released video clips of an event labeled an insurrection by one political side that showed a different story. This was in opposition to the current narrative of the day. He showed the people evidence that was kept buried and was allowing us, the people, to make our own conclusions. Political leaders were demanding a career news and political commentator be removed for downplaying the current narrative of that administration of the day, which turned into a made-for-TV show. An unusual and highly unorthodox investigation, potentially even damaging the investigation itself. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton once tweeted, "In America, we defend free speech. Even when it's offensive, we defend free speech." I applaud that. Because most of us agree with this statement. I think we do. But just a few years later, she and others applauded as political opponents were stripped of their platforms, their voices silenced, free speech gone. When President Trump was banned from social media, public figures and celebrities openly celebrated. You can go research it and see it for yourself. Sacha Baron Cohen cheered, "Twitter finally banned Trump. We did it." Bette Midler posted, "Church bells ring throughout the land." Actor Mark Ruffalo used the hashtags Ban Trump Save Democracy and Remove Trump Now to express his glee about censoring political opponents. It wasn't just these individuals either, though. So many more publicly proclaimed their enthusiasm and support for the banning of free speech. Well, free speech that didn't support their perception or political ideology, that is. These expressions were not quiet acknowledgments of policy decisions, they were celebrations of speech suppression, of liberty's decline, of hypocrisy. on display. Even elected officials joined in and defended this double standard, this bias. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, known as AOC, tweeted, "Freedom of speech does not mean freedom from consequence." Representative Ilhan Omar echoed, "Bottom line, your opinions have consequences, like everything else in life." In 2023, Mark Zuckerberg admitted that Facebook censored anybody the Biden administration told us to, adding, "We didn't ask questions." It was reported and recorded for posterity that Jen Psaki, Biden's press secretary, openly admitted from the White House podium nonetheless that the Biden administration was flagging content on Facebook. These were not just suggestions of suppression, but government-driven pressure for suppression of speech. It was not limited to just Facebook either. Go back and look. Even talk show hosts and networks joined in this idea of banning free speech. Well, speech that didn't toe the line, that is. In 2018, when Roseanne Barr was fired, Jimmy Kimmel said, quote, "This wasn't about free speech, it was about consequences for saying something vile. Actions have consequences and ABC made the right call," end quote. This could be considered an irony. But this begs the question then, what is considered vile? Who gets to make this claim of what is vile? What moral foundation are they comparing what is vile and what is not to? Comparing someone to an ape. I understand the idea of intentions, but we can only infer the intentions of others. However, this I have always found to be an interesting factor, considering the theory of evolution. If humans are descendants of apes, then why would one be offended by being compared to their past evolution status? It would be a part of the genealogy, would it not? Just a thought. This defense of silencing speech has become a cultural reflex, a status quo, possibly for an inability to think for oneself or an inability to achieve emotional maturity. That's my thoughts. But as I imply in my award-winning poetry book, America Then and Now, the danger isn't just censorship, it's what I call historical negationism, the rewriting of truth to fit the popular narrative. The weeds, as I have said, have grown around America's original seeds, the founding principles of liberty, dignity, and truth. Consider the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, that is. Now, early on in this historical event, the lab leak theory that the virus was created in the Wuhan lab was mocked as conspiracy, and those raising it faced professional and career-ending punishment. Today, mainstream outlets acknowledged it as a possibility. There was also this from oversight.house.gov. Classified State Department documents credibly suggest COVID-19 lab leak. And it has been stated that congressional hearings have exposed serious questions about U.S. oversight. Questions that might not have been asked or discussed if not for the so-called conspiracy. Doctors who raised concerns about vaccine side effects were ridiculed, disciplined, and silenced. Later, those very same concerns entered mainstream debate as more data was collected and details were released. And many of these concerns were later proven true. California supposedly even went so far as to pass a law to punish doctors for what those in power considered to be COVID misinformation. Thankfully, it was later struck down. Even hydroxychloroquine was, in a sense, banned as a medication for COVID. Ivermectin was touted as horse dewormer, only for the truth to be revealed years later that it was a medication to help fight COVID. How many people were left untreated? How many people potentially died from a virus that could have been treated with these drugs? And for what? What reason was there for the lies, the censorship, the suppression? Or look at election integrity. After 2020, claims of widespread fraud were supposedly debunked as courts rejected even hearing many of those cases. These actions made one think, maybe the silencing was not about protecting truth, but about controlling which truths could be spoken aloud. The audits revealed numerous false addresses, false or duplicated identifications, and ballots counted more than once. Was it enough to sway the election? We don't know. We may never know. But the truth was there were irregularities, and the concerns that were raised were silenced and oppressed. But for what reason? What reason? I don't know. As I warned in my podcast, from my standpoint, in an age where perception is fact and negativity and conflict remain entertainment, we must open dialogue, speak the truth, and bring common sense back. And then there's this thing called respect. Respect for our fellow Americans, even those we disagree with. Respect does not mean participation or affirmation, but it does call for conversation and consideration. After Charlie Kirk was assassinated, Congress held a moment of silence. This was a time for political leaders to show the people that we could still show respect for each other, even with different beliefs and opinions. Some lawmakers did just that as they bowed their heads in reverence, showing respect for a fellow American murdered by political, ideological, ignorant hatred. Others in Congress shouted, "No!" The silence for respect was broken by division. Many people's actions were now a mirror of the behavior exhibited by many leaders. Online, many mocked the memory and life of Charlie Kirk. People were even celebrating his death. Some posts on social media platforms, such as Blue Sky, were joking, at least I hope they were only joking, about a hit list of who's next, who should be assassinated next. The names that were listed were Trump, Libs of TikTok, J.K. Rowling, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, Dennis Prager, and others. What should have been a time for Americans to show they are of good character and demonstrate to the next generation a solemn act of respect, instead turned into a digital version of Russian roulette, a game of gambling on human lives. But then again, what value does life hold if it's viewed as only a clump of cells, or if life's only value is dependent upon its perceived quality or on its convenience? Thankfully, there were some who called for dignity, such as CNN's Van Jones. He revealed to the world that Charlie Kirk had reached out to him before his death. He says, "Let's disagree agreeably. We need to be gentlemen and sit down together." Jones added, "Praise the good when it's time to mourn somebody." He was for dialogue, open debate, even with me. Speaking of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk himself was often outspoken about his Christian faith. He spoke of the gospel of Jesus, about peaceful debates, and about persuasion through dialogue, not violence.
For those of you that are not yet believers, it's very simple. You're going to have a court date, we all die, and you're all going to meet the supreme judge of the universe. Justice is getting what you deserve, which is going to a not so good place. We're all sinners, and we all fall short of the glory of God. But thanks to the cross, a perfect, loving God who came down in human form, human flesh, lived a perfect life and died for us so that we could live forever. At that moment, we're about to get that sentencing into eternal damnation. Somebody says, no, I know him. I know her. Welcome to eternal life. You have an opportunity. The gospel in 4 words is Jesus took my place. 3 words is him for me. 2 words is substitutionary atonement. And 1 word is grace. Grace you cannot earn.
He was bold in his beliefs, exactly what we on both sides espouse, that we find not only important but valuable to freedom and speech and democracy. His life may have ended in violence, but his message will live on. The author C.S. Lewis once said, "My hope is that when I die, all of hell rejoices that I am out of the fight." Whether you agreed or disagreed with Charlie Kirk, he was in the fight, defending what he believed was true. This is exactly what I meant when I said in one of my writings that America risks losing its moral clarity. Remember, consequence is neither good nor bad. It is a result that follows an action. Our behavior is an action. However, every choice has a consequence, but not every choice is right, and not every consequence may be just. Some actions are born of anger, not of truth. Some actions are meant to silence, not to heal or understand. So we are left with questions. Do we truly believe in free speech, or only speech we like? Do we respect freedom of belief, or only the beliefs that match our own? When a man is silenced, mocked, or even killed for his views, do we honor his humanity, or do we cheer his absence? Now, the actions of many have revealed who they truly are, the character they have built for their lives. A wise man watches where only a fool listens. We've listened. Are you watching? Truth is truth, whether we like it or not. Logic is logic, whether perception agrees or not. We must battle our desires for doublethink, that fallacy of believing two opposing ideas as both equal and truth. Biology versus ideology, life versus choice, kindness versus niceness, truth versus pluralism. As I try to say in my book, America, If You Can Keep It, we are not just inheritors of America's story, but caretakers. What we allow to be silenced, what we refuse to mourn, what we choose to rewrite, that becomes our legacy. What's right is not always popular. What's right is not always easy. The truth is not always popular. The truth is not always easy. But what is right is always necessary, as is the truth. And if we abandon either, we abandon not only free speech, but freedom, liberty, morality, and clarity as well. Liberty demands courage. Freedom demands sacrifice. Truth demands a voice. Romans 10:14-15 says, "But how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him? And how can they believe in him if they have never heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless someone tells them? And how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? That is why the scriptures say, how beautiful are the feet of messengers who bring good news." I, for one, will not stop speaking of, writing about, and declaring the truth. You can hear it in my podcast from my standpoints. You can read it in my books. You can find it on my website, and I hope you can see it in my life. I will not be ashamed of what I believe. I will not be silenced about what I believe. I will continue to stand for what is right, and I will continue to speak of the Savior of the world, Jesus Christ. I don't think I will ever reach the level that Mr. Kirk was able to reach. I will probably never even come close to accomplishing what he did for liberty, freedom, truth, and the gospel of Jesus. But, like most of us, I will do what I can where I am at and with what I have. I hope we all will be faithful and courageous too, even in the face of evil. The line between right and wrong, good and evil, godly and ungodly, has clearly been drawn. And the character that people have allowed to be developed in them by the choices they have made, including which kingdom they will live in and who they will kneel before, the God of heaven or the God of this world, has clearly been drawn. And many have already shown which side they are on. My hope is that I can, one day, be welcomed with those most wonderful words, as I am confident Charlie Kirk and many others have already heard. Well done, my good and faithful servant. I agree with C.S. Lewis when he said this: my hope is that when I die, all of hell rejoices that I am out of the fight.